Deborah. Do you have any other questions as well? Douglas, you guys have yours?
Want me to start? Being pushed out leads to dropping out. What changes can you make to ensure quality in facilities and staff and student success?
If there's a concern with facilities, we could certainly have a facility audit to get a full picture of all of our buildings, and that could be shared with the board first. And we could have some study groups to pinpoint any facilities that maybe need any kind of additional repairs that we've maybe overlooked. And then we can put ourselves on a plan to fix that, if that is what that question is really asking about. We certainly would want to have pride in our buildings, pride to the point where we don't have facilities that are in ill repair, if that's what that question is asking. I kind of felt two things from that question about facility and maybe care for students. So
All the above.
if it's care for students, then that comes from our dedication to every student through our vision and through our mission. And that's accomplished by what I feel when I read all of the literature that we have. So if it's a matter of leadership from the top, trickling down through everything to custodians, then that would be an absolute dedication I would have.
Other than attracting new students, how do you plan to retain the students that we do have?
It has to happen through program and through dedication to meeting individual needs. And so again, if we're not already doing that to a degree that's working, then we have to revisit our commitment. Because on paper, we're already committed to doing that. And so the groundwork has been laid. So we would just need to remind ourselves that that's what we're all about, and then look for ways to walk the talk. And so to me, it's exciting because we are already committed to doing it. So now we just need to find where we are and then add to examples of how we can, and then make sure we're doing that.
And I have one more. Zero tolerance. Do you agree or disagree?
It's sort of a yes, and there are times when I don't know what zero tolerance is referring to. So there are definitely some behavior issues where zero tolerance has to happen. It's by law. We don't have an option about it. And so I would say that for the safety of students, zero tolerance has to be in place when we're talking about weapons and we're talking about some illegal substances and so forth. And so I would be a zero tolerance individual on those law cases. And I would also say that we always want to have the safest environment we can for our students.
Do you have questions?
Yes. I looked at the questions I asked the previous candidate, and I believe that they were true follow-up questions for that person only and don't pertain here, so I'm going to ask the audience a question. In this district, we have had a lot of time to talk, and talk is underlined, about how to right-size the district. Now is underlined. Now is the time for action. What will you do to support the Board of Education in taking action underlined?
Okay, so if there's already been a lot of discussion, then I'm going to take the action forward to say, where are we? What are the wishes of the board? You know, whatever the next steps need to be, then I would go forth with our next steps. if we've already done a lot of brainstorming and talking, has there been any outcome from that talk? Have there been any potential drafts of ideas, or are we at that point? If we're at the draft point, then I would work with the committee, if there's a committee, and start to fashion those drafts. If a committee needs to be formed, then I would create that committee with the appropriate stakeholders and individuals and start to prepare some drafts out of the dialogue that has already happened and take the next steps. I would definitely be a work person and a supportive person of the work that's already been done and put us forth to the next steps and then bring those back for further discussion and so forth until we got to a point where we would say, here's what we need to do. Because it is my understanding that we need to do this, and it's not always fun. It's not always fun to do those things. When I was in Grayling, we had to close an elementary school, and I was part of the committee work to do that. And it was a lot of emotions, a lot of things, but at the end of the day, it was better for the students, and it was better for the budget, and the students are excelling and doing well as time went on, and it was a positive thing at the end of the day when it was all said and done. So I do have that experience of closing that elementary school. I was there.
How do you know when the right time is to implement?
You have to, in my opinion, listen to every person. You have to listen to everybody. And you won't have everyone saying, we agree. But you will have everyone having had a time to share their voice. You know you're okay when everyone has had a chance to share their voice.
Mr. Zone, do you have a question?
First, an audience question that's applicable, I think. So, from your presentation, you mentioned stakeholders. However, you didn't mention when and how you would meet with the parents in this community. So, what would be your plan?
Oh, yeah. There's so many different ways to engage parents that I have had success doing. And the thing to note about parents is that different schedules. Parents have different types of work schedules, and so sometimes I've had parent coffee hours that work. I've had evening meetings that work. I've had lunch times that work. For me, I like to try and poll parents and find out what kinds of options will work for you. I've had large come one, come all types of meetings, and so for me, in addition to blogs, emails, newsletters, those types of media kinds of things that can just go out and they can be read, to actual scheduled set meetings where parents can come in, also having an open door for ideas and sharing those types of things on a regular basis as well. Any and all of that. I don't like to negate a chain of command type of thing if it's we should be talking to the principal of a building or something along those lines, but I certainly like to have an open door with parents to share ideas and those types of things. And so I would definitely have a goal of having multiple kinds of opportunities for meeting with parents.
Thank you. One other question. With regard to your PhD, so you're at the ABD purpose, so do you have topic selection?
I do.
And how would you plan to finalize that going forward?
In other words, if I'm your superintendent, how the heck are you going to get this done, Donnie? Right? Is that what you're really asking me? Yes. My topic is teacher attrition in charter schools. And I have a great deal of research already done, which is good news. I don't foresee that it is something I can't do while I'm not a full-time superintendent. And I have 3 years to get it done. So I feel confidence in being able to complete. I have a class that I have to go 3 weekends that will be finished, as far as I understand the timeline, before this position would begin. Otherwise, it's all on my own time, as far far as when I get it finished.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
John, I have one. We asked them, if you were chosen, how soon could you start?
I am available as soon as you would like to have me, to be honest. Outside of the fact that I have that class, but it's on weekends, so that's not even a problem. What would I have to do? I would have to move, which I'm more than willing to do. So I would need to have some time to orchestrate a move. But otherwise, I would be very excited to begin a transition as soon as the board would be interested in that happening.
Thank you.
I have an audience question. In your initial interview, you discussed putting students first when making budget cuts. Give an example of a budget cut that puts students first. Also give an example of a budget cut that does not put students first.
Okay, so when making cuts, having all of your student need data available for your group is vital. In other words, class from the beginning, from one end of the spectrum to the other, so from if you have preschool all the way up through your seniors, how many students are you going to have? How many sections do you need to have? Any of your intervention courses, anything at all that you've already determined as we believe we have to have. You need to have all of that information available. You have all of your other staffing type information available, from secretarial, custodial, bus drivers, anything whatsoever. And if you're going to say that you have a certain dollar amount that needs to be cut, you have all of that information available, and you would avoid cutting any of the programs that have to do with students. So that's an example of putting students first. So you would first look to see, are there any other kinds of cuts that could be made that are far from any of the student program cut things. You could also stay away from any personnel cuts if you said that's a goal. So then you could look and see, are there any other expenditures that are being made in the district that don't have to do with personnel whatsoever? You could have that graphed out. You could have that in a chart. So if you were going to look at a cut that is related to students, you would check to see, is there a way that in any of your student categories that you may not need, for example, a certain number of sections?